I call Scott Simpson.
Mr Speaker, as Chairman of the Local Government Environment Select Committee, I am going to support this bill, and I do so reluctantly. And the previous Speaker made mention of the criticism that had been levelled at Christchurch City Council in previous debates as this bill has progressed through the House. And I want to just acknowledge that the criticism that was levied at the Council was in terms of their lack of ability as highly paid professionals to get it right. Now, sir, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and in this occasion the intention was to actually make the passing of rates motions at council easy, more simple, and to use so-called simple English. The net result of the change, however, was that the motions that were passed for 9 consecutive years at council were in fact invalid, not correct, and wrong. And the problem with that, sir, is that the net impact, although on this particular instance no malfeasance, no fraud, no wrongdoing, no maliciousness, and no actual, more by good luck than good management, financial liability to council or ratepayers occurred, but had a ratepayer decided to challenge the validity of the rates on any one of those 9 years, then council would have had not a single leg to stand on in terms of enforcing those rates payments. Now that, sir, is not a situation that is professionally acceptable in one of the nation's largest councils. And so, sir, I don't regale at all from my criticism, particularly in my second reading speech on this bill, at the lack of professionalism by council. But when we visited Christchurch as a select committee, sir, we were struck by the manner and tone of the single submission that we received on this bill from the Christchurch City Council itself. And I guess, sir, that some members around the committee found that it was the tone and manner of the submission that was most of concern. It wasn't the error in itself, but it was that there seemed to be no sense of proportion, no sense of contrition, no sense of culpable, and no sense of understanding that, in fact, what had occurred was something that should not have occurred, and that simply Parliament would merely put it right by passing a piece of validating legislation. And as the previous Speaker indicated, sir, this Parliament doesn't like passing retrospective validating legislation, and when it does have to from time to time, usually some local member, and in this case it's my colleague, the member for Christchurch Central, the very good and hard-working Nikki Wagner, who has had to bring this bill to the House as sponsor, a bill promoted by the Council, and she has had to convince her colleagues in caucus and then manage and steer it through the House in a way that I don't think is something that a local member would ever really want to do. So what of this bill itself? Well, this bill seeks to validate specified rates between the financial years 2004 and 5 through to 2012 and 13. Now, the legislation itself has no impact at all on ratepayers. There's no change to the amount of rates or penalties due from any ratepayer as a result of the wrong and error-filled wording of the council passed motions in each of those 9 years. The errors were entirely restricted to the Christchurch City Council's rates resolutions on each one of those years, and the rates assessment notices and invoices contained the right information. This is the sort of slightly odd thing about this, is that the information that went to ratepayers, the actual amount of rates that were levied were correct, but it was just the legal niceties, it was the fine print of the dotting of the I's, the crossing of the T's that did not occur. And so the errors, sir, were spotted by the audit process, and then giving full credit to the council, they did seek to remedy the situation as promptly and as quickly as they could. However, it didn't change the fact that retrospective legislation was still required to validate and legalise the motions that had been passed for each of those 9 years. So what Christchurch City Council did was that they corrected by issuing a revised resolution and resetting its rates as soon as they were aware of it. But the historic errors for earlier years from 2003-4 to 2012-13 could only be corrected via a validating piece of legislation, and that, sir, is this bill. What this bill does is it validates those payments for historic rates back over those 9 years. It validates the penalties that were added to unpaid rates for those years, which of themselves were not legal in terms of the motions that were passed by council. And what it also does is it validates the basis for certain targeted rates during those various years and penalties that were subsequently added to those rates as a result of non or slow payment. What this bill also does is that it confirms that all rates money collected by Christchurch City Council during those 9 years is in fact lawful. What I guess we need to consider as a parliament is what lessons have been learned through this process, and how might we ensure that not only does a situation like this arise at Christchurch City Council again at any time in the future, but how may other councils, district councils, regional councils and other territorial authorities, how may they be protected from a situation of this sort occurring in the future? Well, sir, the good news is that lessons have been learned.
I'm sorry to interrupt the member. The time has come for me to leave the chair. The House will resume at 7:30.